Hilaria Louis-Selly's Lost Children Archive is a novel of dissent. It's a novel of great beauty. It's a novel that kind of forces you to rethink what novel is in some ways, as this family takes this journey west, and as they journey, things start to fall apart, and so the journey is taken as if nothing catastrophic were happening. Louis-Selly writes within the novel. The central tensions in this novel can kind of be pulled out of a question that she asks early on: when did the end of us begin? And so there's a constant sense that things are ending in the novel. The family's stability, in some ways, perhaps the nation. But the novel's beauty is in the way in which Louis-Selly here kind of like describes these grand and wide spaces within America, as well as the more intimate spaces inside the car, or the intimate spaces shared between partners in a relationship. And as she does, the kind of devastating descent of the novel, we really come face to face with it in some ways. One of the tensions here is also how the narrator finds some balance between order and chaos as she collects, documents, as she collects sounds, as she collects her ability to think about those things. Although the chaos, is winning out, it seems that she sees this as it may be optimistic to call our collected miss an archive. In the end, archive being a collection that's purposely of things purposely drawn together. That versus kind of a haphazard gathering of things. She also feels tensions within her psychological balance as the family takes this journey west. She feels disquieting visions and thoughts that churn inside my eye sockets and spill over into my mind. And so she feels herself personally disintegrating in some ways as well. These things all kind of come out not only in the story itself, but how the story is told. The form and genre of this novel is interesting to me as a writer. It's told in these short chapters. There are lists within the novel. There are maps in the novel, photographs, and these things that she calls boxes, collections of things that they take with them, the things that are important to them for the journey itself. It's a collage of environments and voices that she gathers as the novel works itself out. The family goes through a series of transitional spaces that kind of reflect, the momentary writings of each little or each little chapter here. It's a collection of things, an agglomeration of things that are observed and read and gathered by the narrator and her husband and their two children. And it is a novel of dissolution, as I said earlier, that the things seem to be disintegrating here, whether that is the narrator's personal psychology, the family itself, the project that she's involved in, and in some ways perhaps the nation itself as they travel west. This also kind of makes you rethink the boundary between fiction and nonfiction here, right? As the narrator says, there's a tension between document and fabrication. How does history work? And where do you draw the line between what's documented and what is kind of in some ways fictive, or where fiction's basic aspects are applied to history to tell a story. This novel itself kind of bookends with Louis-Selly's book-length essay "Tell Me How It Ends," where she describes her work as a translator for children who have been detained by the Border Patrol. And so the narrator's search for Manuela's children that develops within this novel kind of reflects some of the questions that she asks within Tell Me How It Ends, which is an essay of questions in the end. So you're dealing not only with the fiction of the novel, but also the non-fictional historical moment where 80,000 plus children have been detained at the U.S.-Mexico border, and there's no clear sense of what is going to happen to these children. Also, the narrator thinks about writing's impulse in general. If you try to document something that's awful and catastrophic, why would I even think that I can or should make art with someone else's suffering? So the novel's basic impulse of storytelling, how do you tell the story of a catastrophe, and what's your role as documentarian, writer, or fabricator here? What responsibilities lie with that? So this is the story of the disintegration of a self and family here, as a road novel, because this is a journey that they take into the American West. You might compare this in some ways to if you've read Jack Kerouac's novel On the Road. But the thing that's interesting about Louis Selle's novel is this a journey that's taken west or south here? As the narrator notes, Kerouac's America is nothing like this America, so bony, desolate, and factual. And so from the very beginning, as the family heads out, they go to, in this first section of the novel, they travel kind of southwest from New York down into the Carolinas, and then bend west and end in Memphis, Tennessee. So how do you think about the direction of that journey in the end? Is it west or south? And how do you think about the destination here? As the narrator notes on page 25, some nights the four of us studied the big map together, choosing routes that we'd take successfully, ignoring the fact that they possibly mapped out the road to our not being together. So where does this road lead them? Where does this road take them in the end? Is this a journey of disintegration? You also kind of have to rethink crossings in the novel, how the borders of how we define some common things have shifted in our experience. Family is redefined here, right? You've got two partners who have come together in marriage and have brought children with them from other relationships. So a redefined sense of family is there from the very beginning. As the narrator tells, our family lexicon defined the scope and limits of our shared world as beautiful and real as life feels when you're not thinking about its consequences. We became a tribe, then came the consequences. So family gets redefined here. Nation gets redefined here as well, right, in terms of migration or immigration and movement. And we'll think more about this as we go forward in the novel. As the girl asks at one point, "What does refugee mean, Mama?" And so how is a nation redefined by migration within and into it? Story, as I've noted above, is redefined as well. What does it mean to document something? The narrator writes, an object, our lives, a story. What is the difference between documenting something and fabricating something in the end? And this is key, right? The consciousness itself seems to be redefined within this novel. Late in the first part of this novel, the narrator will note, something changed in the world not too long ago. We sense an absence of future. We haven't understood the exact way we are now experiencing time. And that's a wider sense for how we all experience time. In what ways do we think about future now? Is that something that can be thought in long terms, or has it dissolved in some ways, perhaps? So, how does the telling of this story impact your consciousness of time, as well as how does the narrator's telling impact your consciousness of sound and images as a reader? In what ways do these short chapters and her intensity of narration impact the way you think about sound and image as well as time here? This border crossing is from the very beginning of the novel, right? When they cross the George Washington Bridge and leave New York and go into New Jersey and begin to kind of cut south, they enter a new American geography in some ways. All the way to the end is Arizona, she writes. The plan is to drive from New York southwest bound towards the borderlands. I'm not sure what my husband's plan is either. I don't know how long his project will take him or what will happen next. So from the very moment they cross this bridge, they cross this water, right, there is a sense of going into another country. Now, as this journey unfolds, right, is it into or through a real place, or does the place become somewhat unreal? Is it some other America or Americas that they journey into here? Again, is this a journey west or south? You know, the narrator wants to go to Texas because she wants to kind of engage a sense of border and what's happening on the border to these children. Her husband wants to go into the past and into Arizona to think about the Apaches. It really kind of shifts their sense of meaning, of the meaning of place. As she'll note, the Apacheria only existed in my husband's mind, right? There's no place on the map marked Apacheria anymore. But he goes into the past as well as going into Arizona to find it. There's a moment in the novel, right, where they start to allow the children's voices to take over the silence in the car. And so in what ways do these children's voices kind of redefine the place as real or somewhat kind of playful and unreal as well? And there's definitely a sense of a lost world here. As the boy complains, there's nothing to take pictures of anyway as they cross the United States. Everything we pass is old and ugly and looks haunted. Is this a haunted America that they journey through? Both partners here are work with sound, and so one of the things that happens in this novel is to think about America as a soundscape. In fact, the Spanish version of this novel is called Sound Desert. And so are the characters here, are they chasing sound or silence in some ways, right? The husband's project is set up as an inventory of echoes about the ghosts of Geronimo and the last Apaches, right? He's going into the past to try to get a sense of the sounds that still exist in a landscape. The narrator is a little bit less optimistic in what the project can do. At the end, she notes, right, that it was like we were documenting the last sounds of an enormous beast. And so in this descent, the novel begins, and in this descent, the novel follows its journey.